so much shifting.
All right.
Good morning.
So you know the
chairs.
first thing we need is technology so chairs don't sound so bad. As many as you know, this spring we launched our fundraising campaign for the Roger Ebert Center, which will be a programmatic center in the College of Media here at the university. As part of the center, we'll be offering programs such as this one that combines the great interdisciplinary strengths of the university, and in this case, it is the College of Media, where we are producing creators of news, persuasive, and entertaining content in collaboration with our colleagues just north of Green Street here on the engineering campus, where they are developing the next content delivery systems. For those of you who don't know, the first web browser, Mosaic, was developed here at Illinois, as was YouTube, as was PayPal. So we have the opportunity here at Illinois to simultaneously build content and the delivery systems, which is very unique. So today we want to talk about this intersection of storytelling and engineering, where it has been, where it is going, ethical and privacy considerations, and more importantly, how can we here at Illinois, with the Roger Ebert Center, facilitate interdisciplinary discussions, applied research, and coursework to elevate digitally mediated storytelling. So, what a great panel we have for you. I'm just going to give some very brief introductions. Julie Turnock is an assistant professor of our media and cinema studies in the College of Media. She received her PhD from the University of Chicago, and her new book is titled Plastic Reality, Special Effects Technology, and the Emergence of 1970s Blockbuster Aesthetics. It's out from Columbia University Press, right? It's out now.
Yes, it's out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Donna Cox, we always call Donna a rock star, because she is. She serves as the Michael Aiken Chair and is the director of the Advanced Visualization Laboratory at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. She's also the director of the Illinois Emerging Digital Research and Education in the Arts Media Institute, which, as we like to call it on campus, eDream. And she is a professor in the School of Art and Design in the College of Fine and Applied Arts. Donna, it really does drive this intersection of content and technology here on campus. And any of you last night, Donna is working extensively in 3D and IMAX, and she's just doing incredible. Jason Brett is an Illinois alum from Fine and Applied Arts. He is co-founder and CEO of Mash Planet Studio, which is a digital classroom and a project workspace that helps teachers engage students in online learning and fosters opportunities for collaboration, critical thinking, and creative problem solving. Thea Flom is best known as the creator of Sneak Previews, the movie review show starring Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. She is currently the president of the Hill Foundation for Families Living with Disabilities, which is a nonprofit organization founded by Thea and her husband, Robert Hill. Nate Cohen, who you probably all know, is the driver behind the Ebert Festival. He's also an alum of the university and has worked extensively with us in terms of building not only Ebertfest, but building this center. Dan Aronson is the founder and CTO of Fandor, which is based in San Francisco, and it serves as a subscription service for viewing movies and social video sharing at the leading edge of technology for how we view, create, and curate content. Next to him is Chaz Ebert, not a stranger to any of you in this room. She is our adopted Illinois alum and is the publisher of Ebert Digital, the president of Ebert Productions, and the vice president of the Ebert Company. And of course, she is the executive producer of Ebertfest. She us extensively to raise the funds for and plan programming for the center. And finally, but certainly not least, is Richard Laskowski. Richard is a retired professor here at the university after 36 years, I think, in media and cinema studies. He does continue to teach for us, and he does continue to be a prolific scholar, and he writes regularly for the News Gazette. His specialty is animation studies. So it's a terrific panel, and I'd like to start with just asking everybody to talk briefly about what your thoughts are of this intersection between engineering and storytelling. Julie, we'll start with you.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dean Slater, for inviting me, and thank you, Nate, for including me on this wonderful panel, meeting some people that I'm finally getting to meet for the first time, and that is wonderful. And so the Ebert Center, I think, really has a great opportunity to bring these departments together that don't often get to speak with one another, and I'm looking forward to more of that. The history of special effects, and although oftentimes in film studies the relationship between narration and spectacle is often seen as oppositional, of what I work, most of my work is concerned with thinking about how special effects narrate in large blockbuster films. I know this isn't exactly the audience to talk up blockbuster films. In general, this is more where people celebrate the smaller films. But even the small films these days, every Woody Allen film, for example, has special effects of some variety or another. And so we shouldn't be seeing the kind of, if there's special effects, that somehow it is in opposition to these smaller films. And so from my teaching, I'm hoping to be able to teach a history of film criticism in the future. So much of film studies is based on film theory that has its basis in film theorists like Jean-Luc Godard, who presumably we all enjoyed last night, and the kind of film criticism, knowing his film criticism helps a lot to kind of understand where he's coming from in a film as opaque as Goodbye to Language, wonderfully opaque. But in any case, so I'll pass it on to Donna.
Thank you for being here. I'm Donna Cox, and I've been here for 30 years as a professor in the School of Art and Design. It's quite possible at the University of Illinois to engage with media industry. And in fact, just 2 days ago, we had a director and producer from IMAX here working with our team. I think there are great opportunities here because I also think a bit of trivia is that motion film was also created on this campus. We didn't retain the patent, and there's a long, ugly story about that, which I won't get into. But actually, the research on engineering gave birth to moving pictures as we know it today, and it started on this campus. Our team, like Jen said, specializes in 3D. I know Roger Ebert was a big fan of 3D. We always tried to convince him there was a potential in the future. It's mostly badly done. That's part of what, and when you see a film like last night that's really well done, it starts making you question where the technology is going. Our team also worked on a couple of scenes for The Tree of Life, a Terrence Malick film. So we have been able to be an academic, entrepreneurial production, essentially a production company that engages with students, engages with engineers on campus, engages with the industry. Disney has been out here to Champaign. IMAX, the directors like Dan Glass, special effects people. We have been able to, over the 30 years, be able to bridge some of these gaps, and a lot of it is about language. Sharing a language and a common goal. And there are ways to harness technology to really let story be the driving force, and that the technology is in service of telling that story. And for our team, the goal is to tell the story of scientific discovery. So we specialize in science education film. Even though Tree of Life wasn't that, even the scenes that we did were accurate in terms of the science behind them. But there are other collaborations that are possible on this campus. We have a top-rate engineering college, we have a top-rate media college, and we have, what's more important, the resources of young students. They're creative, they're smart, they're everywhere, they know about the future, they know about social media. I've learned more about streaming a video from my students than I found out online. And the future is either seeing your movies on handheld devices or going to theaters and seeing the highest quality digital media in 4K streaming from a central source. All of those technologies, we've got drones now that are flying cameras. What kind of possibilities are with that? So anyway, I will pass it on to Jason.
So I'm Jason Brett. Full disclosure, I barely got out of the University of Illinois. Actually, I think I was even asked to leave, actually. After 35 years in traditional media, I got my degree in, went on to produce theater for many years, built a theater in Chicago, produced theater, then migrated into film and television, and ended up really most of my career doing the one thing that I didn't do enough of here, which is why I barely got out of here, which is write. I spent most of my career being a writer. And the wonderful thing about being a writer is you get access anywhere. And when I was a kid, in 1961, when Kennedy said, "We are going to go to the moon," I and 3 of my friends said, "Wow, so are we." We were just inspired by that. We formed the WLBF Club, the Witkowski, Lockman, Brett, and Friedman Club. That was my first producing job, actually, because I really didn't have any of the other skills that Witkowski and Lockman did. Lockman, who ended up, I think, with 35 patents at Kodak. But we were going to go to the moon, and in fact, we built our own multi-stage rockets, and by 1966, we put a mouse up 3,500 feet, and actually almost got put in. There were complaints, the ASPCA, because the mouse didn't do too well after the flight. But it became the basis for the first pilot that I ever wrote for ABC called The Space Race. And the relationship of artists and engineers and artists and scientists is, goes way back, it's a bridge that doesn't need to be built. It exists already. And it's a love of story. It's a love of imagination, of inspiration. And in fact, many of the best filmmakers, as we know, are also extraordinary scientists. Jim Cameron, who is the one name I'll drop today because he's a Jim Cameron. Guy goes high, goes low. He creates incredible the Mariana Trench. And he's, I don't know how many patents at this point that Jim has, but and then you've got lovers of science like Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, who just 2 days that they're going to be doing a new 6-part series for National Geographic in partnership with GE called Breakthroughs, all about innovations and the stories around them. But the one thing that connects everybody, as Donna was just saying, is story, narrative. It's why we're all here. It's what connects us as humans. It's what Joseph Campbell talks about. We dream the same dreams. We have the same characters, archetypes. So I think a bridge is an interesting metaphor for the discussion today because it is that thing that characters traverse, and it's got thresholds. And what happens in between those 2 thresholds, the beginning and the end, is the journey of life, and that's what connects us all as humans. That's what moves us. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I founded MASH Plant, which is because kids are now using these things to do their homework, and they're imagining worlds we haven't been to yet. They're animating. They're they're doing their science projects using narrative. I wanted to create a safe, supportive environment for them to be able to do that wasn't YouTube or Facebook, where they could share and have their learning curated. So we created a platform called MASH Plant, which is a digital classroom platform that the teacher moderates. Kids can upload all their stuff, and they can share it with each other.
That's great. Oh, thank you. When I started in television, which is about the same time as Roger started in television, everything that was shot outside a television studio was shot on film. The small Portapak video cameras were things that everybody just looked down on, and hardly anyone could use them, and the quality was really awful. It was shot on half-inch videotape, which was really bad stuff. The problem was that there are a number of creative people always, and the problem is a problem of access. how do the talented, creative people get access to the cameras, to the equipment, to the things they need to tell their story? When I started, what you needed to go out in the field and shoot something, anything, you needed a cameraman and carrying a very expensive film camera who knew really how to use it. You needed a separate audio person. You needed somebody to do the lighting and someone else to put up the lighting, and you needed producers and directors and somebody to make it all happen. Now, which is great, we have people doing things that we call desktop documentaries by themselves, the students that Jason is talking about, and all of the people that Dan Aronson has put on Fandor have created how many things on Fandor?
We have over 6,000 published films and lots more on it.
6,000 published films on Fandor and other things. I mean, they're everywhere. And so the access to equipment to tell a story, some kinds of digital equipment to tell a story, is there. But what about the kind of equipment that Donna is creating? How do we get the talented people who have real strong storytelling instincts connected to the technical equipment to even invent stories to be used, to be told with virtual reality, in IMAX, in 3D, in that birdie thing that I read about that just flies over and looks down and everything. All of that stuff. That's the important connection that I think the Ebert Center can make, that we can take talented people. I used to have them come through my office all the time, frustrated, looking for an opportunity because I worked at public television, so they thought I was more open. And to some degree, I was, but public television was not. It had very little money. Open to giving them an opportunity to try to make something. They had terrific ideas. One of them was Neil Miller, who did a comedy series for PBS called A Sense of Humor. One of the films that you might know about is called The Roommate. The important thing about it is that he was just relentless, absolutely relentless. And finally, I connected him to the person at PBS who was in charge, and she said, well, he's going to do it with us or without us, so we might as well help him. So they did. But getting that kind of, making those kinds of connections of people with the talent and the ability to tell the stories and connecting them with the means to do it, access, is one of the most important things I think we can do at the Ebert Center, is to try to make those connections. Not for people so much to play or to experiment, although all those are fine things, but to tell stories, to tell the kind of stories that move you. So that's one of the things that I think the Ebert Center can do and should do and must do. The other thing is that I think it would be useful for us to curate, to have people and with good, strong ideas that do things, the kind of things that Ebertfest does, which is bring forward the things that people might not ordinarily know about and see and say, hey, there is this good stuff. If you want good stuff, not everything, the good stuff, come to the Ebert Center and take a look at our website and see what's there. Not that there isn't a place for everything, but there is a place for curated content. Fandor is curated content.
Absolutely.
And it's the website, I think, everybody knows, right?
I hope.
Okay, so,
And if you don't, you should.
you know, you should. So, two things, I think, provide access for talented people, and the second thing is to do curating of the kinds of interesting, boundary-pushing, good storytelling that's created. Your turn.
My turn. It's unusual. I don't think I've ever actually been on a panel. So I actually have to say something rather than ask people to say stuff. So I guess I'll talk a little bit with my producer hat on. As most of you know, I've produced a number of feature-length motion pictures and documentaries. And what I think we're missing as producers is embracing technology and distribution systems to the extent that it allows us to explore not only different ways of telling stories, but different forms of telling stories. The Godard film we saw last night was a 3D motion picture shot with a crew of 5 people on Canon single lens reflex 3D, 5D, 7D cameras. So it's amazing technology with equipment that you can buy for under $10,000, or even rent for less than that. But what he did, and what a lot of our, I hate this term, but I'll use it, content creators do, is that they look at the old distribution systems. For example, if you're making a documentary film, it has to be under an hour and a half in length. For film, it has to be under an hour in length. If you're going to show it on TV, you have to cut 2 versions, and you have to abide by those particular rules, or at least you think you do. Godard, who's 84 years old, realized he doesn't have to do that. He can make a movie that's 80 minutes long and make it any way he wants, and it can be seen if he understands how to use self-distribution platforms by an audience. I mean, you talk about curators. Curators are not necessary. I mean, they're helpful in an age where we have more content than we can possibly deal with. But if you have something that a distributor doesn't want to distribute, you can still get it out there. You can still get people to see it, and it can be 3 minutes long. It can be 12 hours long. We don't have to continue to tell stories in the old way. We conceive of everything in terms of old technology, and we have to, as producers and content creators, we have to understand that this technology allows us to do things that have never been done before, and to get them in front of people in ways that have not been available up until now. So as makers of programming, we have to be more than just storytellers. We have to understand how we can use the technology to tell stories in better, different, and more significant ways.
So thank you, Dean Slater, for inviting me on this panel. I'm very excited because actually 25 years ago I was first here because I worked for a company that built supercomputers. And so I've been here both on the technology and on the film side. I've been thinking long and hard about how technology can help with this problem. And here are just a couple of areas that I think that it can be interesting. One is at film festivals, you don't just get to see films, but you get to talk to people who are seeing films, and you get to be excited about that. How can we take that social interaction that we have at film festivals and bring it online? Because the online social interaction is a different thing than this kind of social interaction. I think that's an area of interest. I think data and data transparency is also a very interesting area. So you've made a film. There's all kinds of interesting data about where are people watching the film, what parts of the film are people watching. There's all kinds of great stuff. As a company, Fandor is trying to make the data available to the filmmakers and distributors, but also in the aggregate, how can we all look at that data? I think that the transition of the fact that now everyone can be a patron of the arts via things like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. How can you take that patronage and how can you bring it to be part of the film creation and getting other people to see your films? I think social curation is really interesting. However, Fandor decided not to use social curation as the primary element because if you just do social curation, you end up getting a lot of cat videos. Now I love cat videos, okay? But the idea is there's so much content out there. This is related to what Thea said. There's so much content out there. if you're trying to get people to experience and learn through thought-provoking movies, how do you help people guide people? I slightly disagree with what Nate said, which was, I don't think that there's no use for. There are many paths. I think that curation is one path. I think that just getting stuff out there so everyone can discover things is another path. And I think that the excitement about kind of technology and new access is that we can do everything.
No, that was my producer hat talking, not my festival programmer hat.
Okay, and I think I think that how the panel was described in sort of the Ebert Center talking about creation. Well, creation is just, of course, one piece. We need to look at it as a complete holistic system. So from, whether you call it from cradle to grave of creation to distribution and access. And I think that there's so many interesting areas there. I think there's rich dialogue on this panel and going forward.
Good morning. I am really happy to see Donna and Julie, and I hope that we have a lot of more interaction. It's also good to see women in the area when we're talking about, technology and engineering. We are beginning to see more, but I think that it's really important, and at the Ebert Center especially, I'd like to see more of that kind of collaboration. Both Roger and I were technologists as well as storytellers, and I think that it's really important. One of the things that I've been obsessed with lately is the advent of the 360-degree stereoscopic cameras, where you put people in just a front and center point of view. And I think that those kinds of, I want to see what we end up with, what kind of stories will emerge from there. Because I really do think that that's sort of a path, excuse me, I have these allergies, excuse me. They're very annoying. I've never been allergic to anything, and we can't figure out why now, but anyway. I'll see if I can speak. Because one of the things that I would like to see happen in the marriage of technology and storytelling, I think that we have a responsibility to society, not for censorship, but inspiring and encouraging a generation of people who, even when they make video games, don't want to just make Grand Theft Auto or something where you see people shooting, killing, maiming, raping, having women as just sex or degradation, and telling stories that create some sort of empathy, compassion, kindness. And when I say those words, I really mean them, said lightly. And when Roger said those words, he really meant them. They weren't said lightly. So that's one of the things that I want to see encouraged in the Ebert Center. There are a lot of things, moving parts with the Ebert Center that we have to really figure out. And but I'm really happy to know that part of the team in figuring those things out will be people who have your knowledge and background. And Jason, I knew of what you did, but not as much. I mean, we know each other, but I have to get over there and see what you're doing with those kids at Mashup. That sounds terrific. And I think it's something that maybe we can incorporate. The other thing is, as I look at this audience this morning, my profession long time ago was a trial attorney. And one of the things that I did all kinds of trials. I did, in the beginning, environmental litigation. Then I did sort of civil rights and equal employment opportunity litigation. And one of the sensibilities that I learned is that creativity and productivity does not end at the age of 40. So when I talk about the center, you'll notice that most times I don't say young. I use the word emerging artists, emerging writers, because sometimes you emerge out of your butterfly shell when you are 60. You know, Godard did his 3D thing at 84. So I know that most of the students are young, but I know that we have, and some older students, excuse me, and the stories that we're going, even the technology we're going to use are going to come from some of us who would, I'd have gray hair if I didn't dye it. So some of the things that we do will come from us gray hairs. So I'm just really excited to be able to move this forward, and I call on you to help us with ideas. If you're able financially, help us with financial contributions. But what we're going to do with this Ebert Center is going to be so important, not just for the university, it's going to really go out into the world. What I want to do with the Ebert Center is create a meme, M-E-M-E, for humanity. It's going to start there, and it's going to go out there. And I want your help to do it. If you have any ideas, you can write to me at ebertfest@yahoo.com. ebertfest@yahoo.com. Thank you.
Okay, well, as a film historian and animation historian, I'm very pleased to see the center looking at combining engineering and cinema and media studies, because the cinema is the first art that owes its existence to engineering. The photographic process was developed by people whom today we would call chemical engineers. Mechanical engineers are the people who put together the first projectors and motion picture cameras. And I would say throughout the history of the cinema, it was generally the engineering, the technological decisions and developments that came first. You come up with the technology for putting sound on film, for color film, for widescreen film, anamorphic film. And technological development, then comes the studio's business choice. Well, maybe people will come see this if we make some films using this process. Oh, we gave it a try, they came and saw it, we made money, let's do more of that. And once you've got that groundwork, then comes the artistic developments. What can we do with this new process and this new development in the medium to get our messages across, to tell them more emotionally, more beautifully? So I think that's a good thing. And also, the University of Illinois does its place in film history. It was on this campus that the first demonstration of sound on film was made back in 1922. So that's several years before the Jazz Singer, which was a completely different process. Joseph Ticketchiner, who was the first research professor of engineering on this campus, who came here in 1921, developed this sound system using the photoelectric cells that his colleague on this campus, Jacob Kuntz, had developed. And Kuntz was a pioneer in photoelectric cells, which were responsible throughout the history of cinema for reading off the soundtracks that were placed on films.
Do we have someplace where that story is told? Because I keep hearing about all of these innovations that I did not know about, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know about. I think we have to put something together where we talk
The
about.
development of
think-
the optical strip on a film, that was developed here?
Yes, it was. I mean, one process of it. This was the, I believe it was the variable density.
Okay, whatever.
But
I think-
But anyway,
but
the
the thing
story needs
is-
to be told. We
But-
need to
but
get
yes,
together
that's great.
a cohesive
Did you know that? I didn't know that.
thing about the story.
I left the university too early.
Well, the
That was
problem
before
was-
you left, before you got here.
The problem, though, was that Ticket Chinner had a controversy with David Kinley, president of the university, after whom building that houses the business school is. There was a conflict over patent rights. And so, Ticket Chinner never followed up with the further development of it. But actually, his wife was the first person to actually speak a sentence on this sound film, and that was followed by the head of electrical engineering, Ellery Payne, reciting the Gettysburg Address. So another Illinois connection there. So yeah, there's engineering is important in the industry. Oh yeah, and in fact, in the first Academy Awards, the jazz singer was nominated for best engineering effect. It didn't win. Wings did for presumably, I guess, aerial photography, but the jazz singer did get a special award for the development of sound at that time. So, well, that's enough film history, but you can see how this all fits together and makes a very nice fit.
So let's just talk about the history part. So this university will celebrate its 150th anniversary in 2017. The College of Media was created in 1923 by an act of the Illinois legislature. Yes, those were in the days when they actually did something. We were the first college of media in the country, and the Roger Ebert Center is going to be different than any other film center in the country. So let's talk about how we can make history again here at Illinois through this center and through our partnerships. Anybody who wants to take it on?
Do you want to kick it off?
Me? Well, my goal is always the student. These are the best and brightest, and these are our future, whether it's in media, whether it's in engineering, whether it's in cinema, whether it's in storytelling. And I think it's key that our piece of this, that there is training for the students. And one of the things we're already doing in the college is we have computer science and media classes so that the students are learning how to talk the language of both. We're doing entrepreneurial classes for students, creating a dual major in computer science and advertising. Those are really key partnerships, and there's a great opportunity to do that whole computer science piece with storytelling and I think filmmaking. And so I would really like us to have, I want us to make history in the things that the students are able to do. And I do think with the democratization of content, that the opportunities are just great for students that can participate in the center but may not be here at Illinois, that we could include lots of our partners in the country and around the world to work on this and to have their students and collaborate.
Can I? So I think one of the reasons why I started Fandor is I think that great thought-provoking movies can make the world a better place, and I think that's why people create also. And I know that there are a lot. I'm a CMU alum, and I know that they have a great cross-disciplinary creation kind of thing, and I think that maybe in thinking about not just creation, but how can you make sure that these kinds of audiences can have dialogue, can not just creation, but how can you fulfill the mission of partially what Roger was trying to do?
Yeah.
Okay, get people to think about movies, get people to think about how to have the thought processes again to start making the world a better place. So so I think, as I said before, building a holistic system could be of interest.
And I can say something about pedagogy. I think it's more important than ever that students know and understand how moving images mean and how they work. And we think that because students grew up watching films and watching television and being very mediated, that they kind of understand intuitively how images work. And from my teaching standpoint, that's not the case. It's often, it's very important to understand, why does a long take, why is someone using a long take in a certain circumstance, and what does it mean? What does it imply? Why are these two shots edited next to each other? And that's something that film studies, and most of the, I'm not a maker, but most of the people on the panel are makers, and it's important for students to learn by doing, but it's also important for them to reflect upon what has been made and what they have made, because storytelling isn't neutral. It isn't something you point a camera at something and the story reveals itself. There are, film has a particular language, and the students need to kind of understand how that language works to best deploy it, but also to maybe avoid some problems with representation, for example. And so the history of film and film studies helps a lot to give students, a lot of students don't want to be influenced by previous films because they want to feel like what they're doing is original. But there's not that much that hasn't been done before and that they can learn from or build upon in the past. And so, in my film studies classes, it's just as important to understand why certain techniques were used, why certain technology. And technology isn't neutral either. It's different if you point a film camera at something than if you point a digital camera at something. If you use a certain kind of sound technology, and how those things mean and what kind of meaning they produce is just as important as making.
I think something we shouldn't forget in the construction of this center is that the Roger Ebert Center will be Roger Ebert's permanent legacy. So it needs to address those questions, issues, concerns, passions that Roger wrote about through his entire life. And one of the things he did was he was, in a lot of ways, the conscience of the media industry. He established what he thought were standards, and he held filmmakers and other media content creators to those standards. And I think this, one of the purposes of the center has to be, as Chaz said earlier, has to be out in the world championing those values that Roger held so dear.
Mm-hmm.
And in helping Roger's, one of Roger's gifts that really touched me as a filmmaker was, and as an audience member, was his ability to find humanity and often reference his own life and how that impacted on him, and to help us understand movies so that we might love them as much as he did. And he created community around loving movies. And when you think about it, when the lights go down and there's 200 people, strangers in a room, somehow we all trust each other to go on a journey, which is, when you think about it, we hardly get into an elevator these days with strangers without backing up the wall. But we will willingly go into a dark space to take a trip, to take a journey. So whatever we do, I think it's important that we foster community, because from that we get great ideas, we get innovation, we get of the medium, we get a better world, and we can inspire kids. And what made me go from traditional media to education technology was in 2007, I was approached by the MacArthur Foundation, which was doing a study about what middle school kids wanted from their digital experience, recognizing that that was the first sort of all digital generation. They were completely digitally fluent. They'd only ever known a world where these devices exist. And what came of that was a white paper called the Digital Youth White Paper, which I think was published in 2008, that said that what kids wanted were four things. It won't be a surprise probably to people in this room. They want pure acknowledgement, or they want peer recognition, they want adult acknowledgement, they want social capital, and they want to have an impact on their world. So I decided to create a space, a safe place, where they could use their digital technology and share and exchange and comment and learn from each other. Social learning. It's an old back to the 60s. Writ large in the digital era that we're in. So, and the whole idea is they want community. They want to be able to exchange ideas. They want adult acknowledgement, meaning they want us to tell them if they're onto something, to look at what they're doing, and they want to have an impact on the world. So let's make sure that while we're talking about the adult world of filmmaking here, let's also make sure that we're looking at these young, the next generation, the middle schoolers who need the acknowledgement and the encouragement to become digitally responsible and good storytellers.
Yeah, I think that all of that is true, and I just want to respond to Julie's point, which is very much in the tradition of Roger. Roger used to do things where he would do films a shot at a time. Some of you are nodding. You've seen those, and you know that in those he would take scenes to let you know, to look at exactly what the filmmaker was doing in terms of composition of the frame. Like he would say to me, Thea, you will never see Barbra Streisand anywhere but in the right-hand side of the frame. She will always be in the right-hand side of the frame. And so far, he's right. And that's because he explained to me, I don't know if this is true, that it was, he wasn't always right about every single thing. that was the dominant part of the frame because most people were right-handed, and that's where automatically stronger characters. So if there are two characters, the stronger of the two will be on the right-hand side of the frame. Teaching those kinds of things, teaching how to use sort of the alphabet, the tools of image is hugely important because kids, because they don't get, because it's so easy to create images, they don't think this generation will have. It's not like my sister-in-law still, she acts as though every single picture she takes with her camera is with hugely expensive film. Kids shoot 1 million pictures and videos with their parents' iPhones or with their own all the time. We have tiny grandchildren, 5 years old. Let me take a picture with your phone, Grandma, you know? So they need to learn the vocabulary of image.
You need to give those 5-year-olds their own phones.
Pretty soon, pretty soon.
Are we taking any
I was
questions
just
from
going
the
to say,
audience?
if anybody, we'll open it up for a few questions.
I just wanted to add one thing, that on this campus, there are great interventions of innovation all across the campus. And the Ebert Center could play a major role in helping to bring those innovations together with the students and with the storytellers and be a central intellectual community around this effort, because all of these huge campus, so locally the Ebert Center could help us bring together this, to build these bridges and to expose the storytellers to the innovations and vice versa. And that is a major role that I could see that would be valuable locally. And of course, then harnessing the technology to build that community internationally is another way that the Ebert Center that I could see could function, and that people would be very in faculty and students on campus in joining that effort.
Great.
So
Any
anybody wants to
questions?
ask questions, just come up to the microphone.
You can't be speechless.
We're talking so much about technological innovation. I'm fascinated by all these stories I'm hearing, and I have no idea how much of it is true or not, about virtual reality being the next major breakthrough in cinematic. Now, when they were making the Reese Witherspoon film Wild, at the same time making a virtual reality version where you were following Reese Witherspoon through desert, and there would be these flashbacks to Laura Dern, and it's only if the viewer turns their head a certain way they can see her, and you can just decide whether you want Laura Dern in the movie or not. I certainly would. But, I mean, is this true? How much of this is true? How much of this is going to be the breakthrough? And again, literally putting you in the shoes of the character.
First of all, virtual reality is not new. In fact, University of Illinois helped to pioneer virtual reality. Back in 1993, we were building virtual reality caves at both campuses in which people could walk in and wear stereo head glasses and be totally immersed. There used to be a cave on campus that was a cube, so you would also step in. Your body, you would bring your body into a floor. What's different today is that, and I have students working with the Oculus Rift, and there's a lot of creativity going into these new technologies. These technologies with consumer products that are affordable. So there is a democratization of virtual reality today that is changing things. But virtual reality is not new, and it was actually partially invented here on this campus.
Does the cave no longer exist? I visited that some years ago. Is the cave gone?
The cave was $1 million product, and it would take half to maintain it. So yes, the cave is gone. But virtual reality and what we've learned, and that's been translated into passive stereo. There's been, like I said, interventions in these technologies on this campus with things like Oculus Rift and the 360-degree view that you're talking about. And again, these are technologies, some of them so seminal that hardly anybody can use them. Inventor. I mean, that's how raw the technology can be. But exposing, bringing on critical theory, engaging people into the future of what that story is about, because there's a whole story around that in and of itself. That's what the potential at Ebert has.
That's great. Yes.
My name is Alice Adcock. I come from Edwardsville, Illinois, but I've taught over in St. Louis for a number of years. And I think getting to this age, one of the big benefits is all the connections that I'm finding that are, just different for me. And I think, oh yeah, that's true. In 1983, as a teacher over in Leduc in St. Louis, I was asked to put computers in the classroom. And I thought, well, you have the wrong person because I don't know anything about computers. And so they said, well, you'll learn. And they actually sent me to MIT for 2 summers to learn from Seymour Pappert's Artificial Intelligence Lab. He was developing programming for children. So I was doing this when I came back for the last 11 years that I taught. And one of the things to know is what difference it made for children who started in kindergarten and went through school. So we tracked those that started with us for a longitudinal study. And there wasn't a whole lot of difference. I guess we were looking at scores, test scores and things. In middle school, or any of the children who were taking higher math, and all of a sudden, it just shot through the roof, the things that they could do. But I do remember very young children who had learning disabilities, whom I had taught before I did this job. And they were doing things that I had thought those children could never do. And I couldn't tell, usually I could spot them in a classroom in a regular situation, but when this started, I couldn't. And that was like 30 years ago, and I kept hearing people say they were 30. I thought, oh, I'm watching these kids grow up. But here's my question as an interested person, and I guess from all my life, I've always wanted to know how things worked or how people worked. And I kept trying to imagine when I watched the 3D film, what did what did the story thing look like? What did the script look like? If you were going to do a scene, you know, I kept trying to figure out how that would be. And when you're talking about innovation and doing these, and you want children to be looking at film from that framework, I just thought it was curious. I thought, can anybody kind of explain what the storyboard looked like for that picture yesterday?
So Godard said that there was no script.
No, there was actually
But
a
we were
very
told there
thick
was a
script
script, yeah.
for it, yeah. That, believe it or not, it was very, very scripted, and it wasn't just a lot of improvisation.
Play or experimentation you were talking about, you know, there's more there, and I was trying to get that insight into what.
But you know, digital technology does for us, because of it's so inexpensive to use. The camera becomes the pen. You can write essentially with the camera and not go through that intermediary blueprint stage with having a script, which you normally had just to economize so that you didn't waste time, waste money. But particularly for students making films, if you can get into their heads the idea that they can write with a camera, then I think that's a giant step in an interesting direction.
Don't try
Thank
using
you.
whiteout.
Thank you so much. I think
Thank
this
you.
is an outstanding panel. I just really enjoyed this.
Thank
I
you.
wish I were like 40 years younger now. I could start over.
I have a question. We talked about, I'd like to address the way in which the Ebert Center can and will hopefully be used to sort of spur interdisciplinary conversations, sort of conversations between filmmakers and psychologists and sociologists and people in the humanities and that kind of thing. So I'd like to how you envision that being part of the Ebert Center.
Well, I guess I'll take that one. And what I like to say is interdisciplinary is not a key word at Illinois. It's a way of life. This campus was built on that sort of interdisciplinary discussion, research, collaboration, and classes. So there will definitely, this will foster all of that discussion. Julie's already putting together some research people who are doing research in film from all over campus. In touch with people in psychology who are interested in looking at how people watch film. We're already talking to people in our applied health services group who are looking at how film affects people with medical problems. We have, you know, again, another first. Disability, how campuses dealt with disability was created here at Illinois by Ted Nugent. So, or Tim Nugent, sorry. Ted Nugent was the other guy. I always get that wrong. Don't print that correct. Tim Nugent. And so disabilities and how back to them, how we accommodate them, how we teach about them have all been created here, which I thought the story about the computers was really excellent. So yeah, definitely be a key part, and that's a part of the university. So, and so like Beckman Institute, NCSA, where Donna is, the Institute for Genomic Biology, the Institute for Humanities Research, the Institute for Research Communications, which is in the college, all of those are all interdisciplinary pieces. So thanks.
Thank you so much to the panel, and thank you to the last questioner about interdisciplinarity. That was exactly my question, and I wanted to take it a step further and actually talk about transdisciplinarity. Transdisciplinarity having to do with complexity and the complexities that we face today in terms of the problems, the severe challenges we face just in terms of life, welfare, poverty, and also the challenges and opportunities we face. The other side of transdisciplinarity has to do with not only understanding complexity, but also finding and even finding solutions beyond the academy. When I asked, thank you, Dean Slater, for asking the question Center could do, and I think the possibilities are enormous. Ms. Cox, when you talked about the possible role of it just being a center of bringing all of different disciplines together, I think is powerful, but also to go beyond the academy, the theory, policy, and practice, and also art, science, and humanities. That's what we have talked about. Ms. Ebert, thank you very much for talking about the gray hairs. I'm one of those. I've returned to the academy recently, and I'm also trying to translate scholarship into film and trying to find ways to do that. They're just, all of you had comments. When you spoke about writing, also writing in the center, coming back to the academy and just looking at the capabilities around writing. This is so key around film and around scholarship, around, anyway, thank you very much. If you had, anyway, just the transdisciplinary piece I wanted to put on the table, and
Thanks. Thanks. Thank you all very much. If you wouldn't mind for me. The 1 o'clock movie isn't that far